Hey folks, welcome back to another Throat Punch Lunch, episode 10. It's finally over. What is over? The elections. I'm so happy that as you're watching this now, the elections are hopefully over. Hope you all went out and did your civic duty and voted, but finally it's done. Now we just have to live with the consequences, right? Anyway, enough about that. I've got a pretty cool episode lined up for you today. A lot of cool contributors are in here. A lot of the ones that you've been known for. Marty Cannell, Tim Jeanette, Bauer, Jerry Acevedo. There's all a bunch of those core contributors are back. We also have a new contributor, Laura Williams from Married to Board Games. She's going to start throwing in some segments. So that's a really cool segment that you can look forward to. Also have Liz Davidson back, our new solo thrasher. We also have Brian Drake back, the latest retro. So just a lot of cool content in this episode. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Let's get to it.
In the last installment, I shared how board game publishers are incorporating more miniatures, which is starting to blur the lines between miniature games and board games. Well, on the flip side, which is where I think you'll catch Sam Healey, there has been a trend where traditional miniature game publishers are now publishing board games. Let's look at some of those companies and their games in this installment of Face Up, Center of the Table. When you think of some of the major players in miniature gaming, two that immediately come to mind are Games Workshop and Privateer Press. Games Workshop has been around for decades and early on was known for its RPGs and board games like Hero Quest and Warhammer Quest. But in the early 90s, they started focusing more on miniature wargaming. Now with Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40K, they are one of the premier miniature game publishers in the industry. Since 2003, Privateer Press has also set itself up as a dominant player in miniature gaming. War Machine and Hordes are extremely popular miniature games that has quickly risen to the top in sales and player base. While their main focus has always been miniature war games, recently both Games Workshop and Privateer Press have started releasing board games that leverage their expertise in miniature figures. Games Workshop is going back to its roots by publishing board games. These include recent releases such as Gore Chosen, Lost Patrol, Assassination Execution Force, Death Watch Overkill, Betrayal at Calth, The Burning of Prospero, Warhammer Quest Silver Tower, and Blood Bowl. All these games take place in the Warhammer 40K or Warhammer Fantasy universe and range from dungeon crawlers to co-ops to arena battles. Like all board games, everything you need to play is in one box without the need to buy any additional models. But one thing they do is leverage their existing miniature line, and some of these games include the exact same miniatures as those in the miniature war games. This helps tie their universe together and gives gamers some great components in their board games. Privateer Press has also released board games in their War Machine universe. The Undercity in the expansion Black City Irregulars is a dungeon crawler using iconic characters from the Iron Kingdom setting. They also released a series of sci-fi board games entitled Level 7. All these games use high-quality single-mold miniatures that allow you to play right out of the box. So there are examples of two of the largest miniatures game companies publishing standard hobby-style board games. But why? I have a couple theories. One is that they want to create these games as a way to help introduce board gamers to the miniature hobby. See, if gamers get used to working with and playing with miniatures, then maybe they'll check out their full lineup of miniature war games. Another theory is they want to introduce their hardcore fans to board games by leveraging the universe and characters they know, which will hopefully lead to yet another revenue stream. Regardless of the reason, the gap between board games and miniature games continues to narrow, because publishers on both sides of the hobby are creating products that are approaching that middle ground. And whether you're a board gamer or a miniature gamer, we are all winners as a result. Great job, everybody. That's a wrap. What? No, I didn't want to put any jokes or anything in this one. I want to be taken as a serious commentator. I don't have to rely on jokes or silly gags or anything.
Now it's time to share the love.
With me, Laura Williams.
Hey everyone, I'm Laura from Married with Board Games. My husband Spencer got me into gaming through some lighter, easy to learn Amerithrash games, and I wanted to share with you how you can do the same for your friends and family. So we're going to be looking at how we can share the love of gaming with the world, and today we are going to start with a little game called King of Tokyo. King of Tokyo has two very familiar concepts you can use to explain the game to newbies. First is Yahtzee. The Yahtzee style mechanism of chucking dice, keeping what result you like, and pressing your luck to get the desired result by rolling again should be at least somewhat familiar to anyone who has ever played a Yahtzee style game, or people who like to hang out in the casino. The second mechanism that the game relies on heavily is the King of the Hill concept. Many video games use this in a multiplayer arena format. The concept is simple. The longer you remain king, the more points you receive. However, you make yourself the prime target for attacks. Don't stay on the hill for too long. If you can get those two main points across, then you can go into more details about the specifics of what each die result means, the power-up cards, the nitty-gritty of how damage is dealt, and how to heal. Soon, you'll be having a blast chucking those dice, pressing your luck, and fighting for control of Tokyo. Plus, everyone will come away with their favorite character. Now, if you start with King of Tokyo and your friends and family enjoy it, then you could open the door to games like Elder Sign or Pandemic the Cure and even Roll Through the Ages. I mean, who can say no to rolling dice? Let me know on Twitter if you were able to share the love. Tweet to me at MarriedWithBG. Until next time, I'm Laura Williams, telling you to keep sharing the love.
Hey everyone, this is Tim Jeanette the Meadow Meeple, and this is the Miniature Breakdown. Now that I have my Arena Rex models put together, I want to put some basing materials on them so they look a bit more spiffy once they're painted up. Let me show you what I mean. You've probably seen this plenty of times, but people put different amounts of sand and static grass on them to kind of make them look more like the battlefield that they're fighting on. So with these models, you know, their bases are just slick. So what we need in order to put basing material on them, we're going to need an old brush that you can get glue all over, because we're going to have to do a mixture of glue and water. You're going to need some basing materials. Now, a lot of people will use like kitty litter and like playground sand and things like that and mix them together. But Gale Force 9 does make some of this basing material here. It's real fine sand, and you have different grits of it. These are basically like little rocks that you can put on there. Then you're going to need some static grass, which they also make. More on that in a bit. Something to mix the glue in. And then I like to use two different types of glue. You've got wood glue and just your standard school or PVA glue, the white glue. I like to use wood glue to glue the bases down, or the stuff onto the base, and the white glue on the static grass. Just because for some reason I've always used the wood glue. I don't know if it really matters, but that's what I use. So you're going to take this and pretty much dilute it about 50% into the thing that you're going to mix it in. You're going to take an old brush, and you're basically going to paint it onto the areas that you want it to stick. Once you've done that, and I'm not doing any of this for real because it's hard to do it with the camera, but I'm going to kind of simulate it. You're going to dip the model into the container that you have all the basing material on, and you'll give it a little shake. Now, this is all going to fall off because it's not glued, but otherwise all the stuff that does have glue, it'll stick. The rest of it will fall off. Once you've done that, you're going to let that dry. Now, what I also like to do in the meantime is hand place some of these bigger rocks onto the base, that way I can paint them as rocks later on. Once it's dry, I'll go through, or it's going to look something like this. And you can see some of the bigger rocks here that I glued on specifically. You can do that afterwards or kind of feed them into there. And then what I like to do is once it's dry, I like to go back over it with another coat of glue, like probably a little bit more watered down, to kind of make everything stick together. Once that's finished, I just prime it black. It's going to look something like this. Now, a lot of people do like to put the base material on afterwards and stuff like that. I play with my models too quickly, and I can't get to all the models to paint them, so it just makes sense for me to do it this way. Once you're done with that, you're basically going to just paint it up as normal. The static grass is a little different. You can see here, the reason they call it static grass is because it does stand up. You basically take your brush with some white glue, watered down white glue, and you paint it in areas you want it to stick. And then you take the static grass and you sprinkle it from above, and as it hits the base, it stands up like that. Now, lastly, they do sell, bases that are pre-made. These are just molded into, the standard bases and stuff. You can buy these, but I think it's a little bit cooler to make them yourselves. So, anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at timjeanette@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at the information below. And until next time, keep on rocking and rolling dice.
Welcome to Countercharge here on Throat Punch Lunch. Yes, I'm wearing my 2003 Central Division Cubbies t-shirt and my Cubbies hat because, yes, the Cubs have won the World Series. I'm a Chicago native, a lifelong Cubs fan, and I'm just thrilled that they won the World Series. Now, most people know me from Cleveland, and I am also a huge Cleveland Indians fan, so I just had my dream World Series. I couldn't lose, so it's a little hard to celebrate in Cleveland right now, but congratulations to both the Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians. It was a World Series for the ages, a true classic. It's amazing that an entire baseball season comes down to one inning of baseball to determine the championship. It was a classic. But you're not here to talk about baseball today. We're here to talk about Kings of War. Yes, it is time. I am going to start talking about Kings of War here on Throat Punch Lunch. Kings of War is my favorite tabletop war game right now. So back a year or two ago, Games Workshop decided to take away the Warhammer world. They blew it up and unleashed Age of Sigmar on the world. People were burning their armies in protest, and it was a horrible time. So now, the wargaming community basically fractured into three pieces: Age of Sigmar, the Ninth Age, and Kings of War. I selected Kings of War. I played Kings of War in first edition. I really enjoyed it. So when second edition came out, coincidentally, right about the time Age of Sigmar came out, it was a slam dunk for me. That is what I was going to play. That was my game. So why do I like Kings of War? I like Kings of War because it is a short rule set, okay? It's 20 pages at the most. I mean, it's very concise. The rules are really tight, and they're very intuitive. Once you play the game, you will get it down really quick, okay? The other thing, it's not expensive to get into, okay? The hardback rulebook's $25. Of course, you can find that cheaper online, all right? There's no army books to buy. They're all in the core rulebook. Now, there are some expansions that you can buy, and those are pretty cheap too, ranging anywhere from $25 to $35. And they're not totally required for you to play the game, but they're out there, all right? The other thing I really like about Kings of War is the community. The community is outstanding. It's building and growing, and you can find these games all over the place. They just had the UK Masters, and they had 75 players over there. They've just expanded it and announced 120 players for next year's Clash of Kings in the UK, which is very exciting. Kings of War is a very vibrant tournament community right now, especially in the southern United States. I think they're planning 13 tournaments for next year. It's going to be outstanding. So, and the other thing I really like is the fact that these tournament gamers want you to be there. They're very welcoming. They really want you to play Kings of War, okay? And they're very friendly. And all the tournaments I've been to, I haven't seen any arguments. I really haven't seen any rules questions. And everybody just wants to help you enjoy it. And because they want you to come back. They want you to be part of the community, even as a newbie, all right? And that's the other thing I like about Kings of War is that if you are a new player, you can still go to a tournament. You know, my buddy Jeremy went and never played Kings of War before. He did play Warhammer. Came in third at the Clash of Kings at Adepticon. How cool is that? So you don't have to be a die-hard wargamer. The other thing I like is the Mantic models are easy to assemble. I mean, and they're inexpensive. Now, in some cases, they're cheap, okay? But they're inexpensive. And so, you know, that's a really important thing, too, when you are, you know, picking a game that you're going to play. So, and the best thing, the rules are free, okay, for you to take a look at. Go up to the Mantic Games website, manticgames.com. Go to the free rules section, and you can check out the core rules and the core army lists, and you can see if it's for you. I certainly hope it is. Now, I am not going to talk about Kings of War every episode for the next 15 episodes, okay? I'm going to intersperse them, and we're going to go over the rule book and the models and basing and all sorts of stuff. I love this game, and I want to share my love of this game with you. So, all right, I hope you join me on the journey, and until next time, take care.
Definitely want to bring some games on this trip next week, but I have no clue what we're going to play because we just don't have enough room. See what I'm doing right now? This is called a dramatic reenactment. If only. Seven Wonders. It's an incredible game. It's easy to teach people. Card drafting, great mechanics. There's no room. We're going to be on an airplane, an airport. There's no way we would make this happen. If just there was another game that involved card drafting and wonderful art, big structures, and that played less people, for instance. I don't want to play this. This plays a robot. You have to play a robot for a second character if you're playing two players. If only there was a game made for two players that, well, had card drafting and wonderful art and played in a very small area. That would be amazing. Oh, that's what happens. There is. It's called Tides of Madness. You say Tides of Madness. I thought it was called Tides of Time. It is. This is the re-implementation of Tides of Time called Tides of Madness. And you'll notice a very specific, important character up here. Cthulhu. Because who doesn't like Cthulhu? You can't not, because every game has him. Food Chain Magnate to Le Havre, they're all Cthulhu universe games. It's crazy. Caverna. All of these games are in the Cthulhu universe. And trying to find a way to balance the Cthulhu universe amongst everything else is hard. But never mind all that. You say, okay, Brian, I don't really care about the theme. I just want to draft some cards and I want to play a game that doesn't take up a lot of space. I've only got those little comfortable seats in the airport with the double armrests. Well, this game is for you. Tides of Madness is a card drafting game. It doesn't take a lot of room. It doesn't take a lot of time. It only takes two players. If you're looking for something that doesn't take much room, doesn't take much time, and only plays two players, kind of like I just mentioned, this game is for you. You do not want to pass this up. The art is incredible. This is an example of some of the art right here. You can check out my review of this at The Latest Retro on YouTube to see kind of what I thought about the whole game in general. But just to tell you a quick one, this is a game for you. If you're looking for something quick that doesn't take up a lot of room, here's the deal. I keep saying that, it doesn't take up a lot of room. Literally, there are those seats in the airports that have the extra wide armrest where you can have chargers and there's comfy chairs. There's about 12 of them at each Southwest terminal. My wife and I played this game on two of those armrests, and that's all the space it took. There's no dice, there's no maps, there's a few tokens, but they can sit in the box. There's a golf pencil, which, that's good for golf pencils. But anyway, this game allows you to draft cards, do combos, save your tableau for another round in a matter of minutes. This game is so good. It takes the Tides of Time system and upgrades it with this madness mechanic. You say, madness? Aren't there a lot of games that deal with madness? Yes, in fact there are. But here's the thing about this one. It's made in such a way where if you don't like Cthulhu, it doesn't matter. The theme, while is awesome with the art, doesn't really matter. It's about drafting cards and drafting set symbols and all that kind of stuff. So if you like a good card drafting game, but you're always trying to find a way to play it with less people or less space, Tides of Madness, I could not recommend this enough. From the art alone, it's worth just taking these cards and stapling them up to your walls. I don't recommend that because it's not free, but this one is a must get. Portal Games knocked it out of the park with this for those parameters that I gave you. So, till next time, check us out on YouTube, The Latest Retro, for all kinds of video reviews. You can check out our full review of this, as well as other games on there. Thanks for watching Throat Punch Lunch. Enjoy those fries of throat punchiness or whatever you're eating today.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Roy Candy from Epic Gaming Night, and this is Roll with the Punches, where we talk about randomness in games and how it can make a game exciting, and also how to mitigate luck into your favor. Today we're going to be taking a look at luck of the draw, like different card games and shuffling the deck and randomly getting cards, and the first game we're going to talk about is Magic. In Magic the Gathering, players try to construct the best deck they can to take out their opponent on the field of battle by playing all sorts of different spell cards that they use land resources that they tap to be able to play those onto the board. Many players have experienced this situation where you shuffle up your deck, and then when you draw, you don't draw enough land cards to actually be able to play any of your creatures. And then you mulligan your hand away, shuffle up, and then draw one less card. As if you were playing like in a tournament, you always have to mulligan one less card, but then you have too many land cards. Then you shuffle your deck some more, and you end up having not enough land cards again. So you're completely out of the game. There's ways to mitigate the lands you get, but some are expensive, some are even more expensive, and some are insanely expensive. Luck of the Draw is definitely a big deal in any sort of collectible card game. It's all about deck construction and deck building, trying to make sure that you're taking out things you don't need and make sure you try to build your deck into a lean, mean fighting machine. Anybody who's played Magic the Gathering has definitely had issues with the whole mana flood and like not getting enough mana and all sorts of things like that, just mana issues in general. And there's definitely great alternatives and ways to fix those sort of things. Although the best ones are super expensive. So because the game is so expensive, most of us that have started playing Magic have pretty much abandoned it at this point. So that's enough talking about Magic. As Rise of the Phoenixborn, players construct a deck trying to take out their opponent's Phoenixborn. The one who does will win the game. You get to pick your 5 cards that you start the game with, so you can base your strategy around that. You roll your resource dice, and you can use different things to mitigate how those dice work. So you can discard cards off the top of your deck to change the dice up to get the faces that you need, so you'll be able to properly play the cards that you need to play. So that way you can hopefully best your opponent. There are also cards that let you go through your deck, pick out specific things if that's part of your strategy. Ashes Rise of the Phoenixborn is definitely an exciting expandable card game. I love how you get the first 5, you can pick exactly what you want to start with in the game, so you can play your strategy all around that. And in tournament play, you get to pick your first 5 after you see what Phoenixborn your opponent is playing. So that way you can try to figure out, oh man, they're going to play this, they're going to do that, so you can maybe switch a card in or out of your first 5. You also have the randomness of the dice that come in, but there's lots of ways to mitigate that with meditating and discarding cards and changing those up. But Luck of the Draw still comes into play, because after you have your first 5, you're still going to draw cards off that for the rest of the game. But you're going to be drawing your hand up to 5 every turn, so you get to draw a lot more cards if you play a lot more cards. So it's kind of interesting how you do that, and it's all about the deck building still with this game. So that way you try to build your deck the best way you can, so you have the correct cards in there, and hopefully you get them at the right time. Card games are all going to have a decent amount of luck, and hopefully you can figure out ways to mitigate that with different card play, like different cards that allow you to search through the deck for specific cards and different things like that. So if you're interested in checking out collectible card games, there's several LCGs out there that are really exciting as well, so make sure to check those out. Thanks so much for checking out Roll with the Punches. Make sure to check out my podcast at youtube.com/Epic Gaming Night, and we'll see you guys next time.
Throat Punchies, I'm Forrest from Bowers Game Corner. I'm back again for 3 reasons where I do something vaguely related to the number 3. Now this time we are going to be sticking with games in the top 1,000 on Board Game Geek, but I'm actually going to be talking about my 3 biggest disappointing games of the games in the top 1,000. I actually got this idea after watching the recent Dice Tower Top 10 list, so go check out that list if you have not. So without further ado, I'm going to be telling you my 3 most disappointing games in the top 1,000. So first and foremost, I'm a big Thurn and Taxis fan, currently sitting at number 299 on Board Game Geek. However, Thurn Taxis Power and Glory is one of the worst expansions I have ever played in my life. I rated it a 3 on Board Game Geek. That's how much I hate it. So essentially, Thurn and Taxis Power and Glory expansion is not really an expansion. It's a completely different game with 85% of the components you need to play the game already in the box. So they're charging you full price for nearly all the components, but you still need a couple carriage cards to be able to play. Now, the thing that really kills this expansion for me is that it completely strips away all the tension in the game. So there's this thing where if you get to 7 carriages, then you win the game. Well, the game ends immediately, and blah, 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 blah. So they tried to fix that, but in doing so, they removed all the tension from the game. Without a doubt, one of the most disappointing games I have ever played played. Third in Taxis, the Power and Glory expansion. Steer clear of that one, at least in my personal opinion. Number 2 is not a game that is necessarily bad. It's charting on number 141 on Board Game Geek, and it's incredibly popular. It's at Target, it's at Barnes & Noble, and that is Dixit. And I wanted to love Dixit. I love party games. I like the artwork. It was a present from my aunt. I was super excited to play it, and then it just fell completely flat for me. Now, this one is more of a personal thing, actually. I have attention deficit hyper disorder. Yeah, crazy, I know. But my brain is just not wired the same way as other people, and in most games, I don't notice this. However, in this game, I noticed this. I just get so frustrated because I can never figure out anyone else's clues, and my clues never make sense to anybody. I think I've played this like 9 times now, because I just keep expecting to love the game. And I've lost all 9 of those times, and I've lost by a mile each time. My brain is just not wired the same way, and that's why Dixit is incredibly frustrating to me, and my number 2 on this list. Now, my most disappointing game in the top 1,000, and also my most disappointing game ever, video games, board games, is without a doubt the number 1 game on Board Game Geek. And no, I'm not trying to be contrarian. It is Pandemic Legacy. So I love Matt Leacock. Me and my wife absolutely adore Pandemic. It's her favorite game of all time. It's in my top 5 games of all time. We've got the expansions. I even like the Bioterrorist expansion. Yeah, I'm one of those crazy guys out there. So we played this 2 players, and I was expecting just fantastic, amazing things, and we did. We got a great story, we got exciting when we got to open the boxes and cool elements, but overall it was incredibly boring. It had very little tension. I think we lost 1 or 2 games the entire time, and it just got to the point where we'd be 30, 35 minutes into the game and be like, oh, we know we're going to win. Do we need to finish this? And be like, yeah, we do need to finish it because we have to take chart, we have to keep track of different things. But I was just so let down by this game, and it just killed me because I love Pandemic and I wanted this to be one of my favorite games of all time, and it's not. It's actually number 1 on my most disappointing games of all time. But have you ever had similar experiences like that, where you were super excited to play a game and then it just didn't live up to your expectations for a variety of different reasons? Let me know about it in the comments below. And if you have any ideas for me on my upcoming 3 reasons, let me know in the comments below. And as always, back to more throat punching goodness.
Hi, I'm Liz Davidson from BeyondSolitaire.net, and this is the 2nd episode of SoloThrash, Amerithrash gaming for those of us who like to play alone. By the time you watch this video, the World Series will be over. I, for one, was cheering for the Cubs. I am a lifelong Yankees fan, but I also went to college in Chicago. No matter how you feel about the results of the World Series, who says that baseball season has to be over? Now, you can have a World Series anytime you want, right in the comfort of your own home, thanks to the magic of Baseball Highlights 2045 from Eagle Games. Baseball Highlights is a deck-building game that envisions baseball in the year 2045. The sport was on the brink of becoming boring, until they added cyborgs and robots into the mix. The game is actually a series of mini-games that simulate the World Series. The best of 7 wins. Between each mini-game, there's a bye phase. You start with a basic team of veteran and rookie players. Like so. But over time, you can acquire free agents with awesome abilities, while sending your less desirable cards to the minor leagues. You can use the actions on your cards to either press an offensive advantage, such as getting an automatic single against a cyborg, robot, or natural player, or you can stop your opponent from scoring by canceling hits or picking base runners off of the bases, while you threaten hits with your own slow, average, or fast base runners. Although Baseball Highlights accommodates up to 4 players, it's really best with 1 or 2. To set up a solo game, you need to create a deck of 15 free agent cards that allow your AI opponent to play throughout the game. Before you start playing, you need to go through a couple of buy phases yourself to acquire some free agents of your own, unless of course you want to get totally destroyed. The developer recommends 2 buy rounds for a healthy challenge, but I would say that you should start with 3 if you're a new player. You would think that a random deck of free agent cards would be easy to beat, especially since the cards aren't being played with any particular strategy, but you would be stunned at how often the AI lays waste to your plans. I really love deck building games, and Baseball Highlights 2045 is a great little deck builder because it's a really fun mix of strategy and surprise. In a two-player game, you're constantly watching the other player to see what cards do they still have, what free agents are they buying up, and you're asking yourself, how do I construct a team that can mitigate their strengths and target their weaknesses? My one complaint about the solo variant of the game is that a lot of that element is missing because you're essentially playing against a randomly generated deck that doesn't have a set strategy. One way that I like to adjust this if I feel like playing a more strategic game is I will actually go through the free agent cards and I will create teams whose skills I think have a lot of synergy and who will present me with a really good challenge. And I actually think that makes a lot of thematic sense because, I mean, let's get real. You know, baseball teams are totally researching each other all the time to see who's in the lineup and who's good at what. But overall, I really love Baseball Highlights. I think it's a great solo game. The take on baseball is really fun. You know, I really like the robot hitters and the souped up cyborg pitchers. The other thing that's really cool about this game, I think, is that it's quick enough and it's strategic enough that you will probably enjoy it even if you aren't already a baseball fan. So whether you want to enjoy the World Series for just a little longer, or you're just looking for a quick and strategic game to play during your alone time, I highly recommend Baseball Highlights 2045.
Hey folks, welcome back to another Canvas segment. Today we're taking a look at a guy from Dublin, Ireland. His name is Nigel Swan, and he has a little thing going in his office space that might actually make some of us want to be an accountant at his firm. So let's go ahead and take a look at what he does with his board gaming hobby at work. Nigel Swan is a partner in an accounting practice in Dublin, Ireland. He's been a gamer for over 30 years now, and as the years progress, he started to organize game days for the office staff on the last working day before Christmas holidays. As the practice grew and more staff came on board, their game day would normally involve pitch card. Eventually, though, this led to James, Sinduk, Dean, and Nigel having a go at Blood Rage after hours one evening. They would also play games like Dominion and Smash Up at one of the desks during lunch hour and continued to try new games. But one morning, Nigel came into the office to find a 6-foot by 4-foot table taking the place of their little lunchtime table. They broke out Twilight Imperium 3. Now they had an advantage in that they weren't in a hurry to go anywhere and they could leave the game set up from day to day. Their first game took over 2 weeks of lunchtime play to finish, and 2 more games quickly followed with a respectable win to each one of them. Now when co-workers go on holidays, they have to revert back to 2-player games like Rebellion, but now that they're back to 3, they're trying The Others by Eric Lynn. As the holidays draw near, they will soon be setting up pitch car again so that anybody can take a practice for the upcoming game day and go for a win in the championship. See, I told you, kind of makes you possibly want to be an accountant in Dublin, doesn't it? Well, thank you, Nigel, and all of your co-workers and friends there for sharing what you do in the hobby, combining that with work, making it fun for people to work in your office using board games. I think it's a great idea, really cool. I wish I had a job where we could do that. That's right, I do. Well, anyway, thanks for joining us here on the Canvas this week. On to more throat punchy goodness, as Bauer would say.
Hi, welcome to Miniatures World. I get a lot of questions about sizing as far as the metric versus the American version as far as miniatures go. As you know, the European standard is in millimeter and the American version is in scale. So we're going to talk a little bit about this, but the best thing to do is to go down the table and take a look at the miniatures and explain it from there. So why don't we head down there and take a look. Now let's talk about scale a little bit here. And I'm going to try to make this as easy as it can be, but there's millimeters, which is usually from the foot to the eyes, and that's how that was measured. It is a European measurement, of course, a metric measurement, but when they would consider 28 millimeter figures, you would measure from the foot to the eyes. Now, not everything was exactly to the point. There are just some fantasy figures that are completely out of whack. Now, 15 millimeter, the same thing would apply from the feet to the eyes. But with tanks, of course, they're going to be a lot bigger. But as you can see, these guys in here, they are actually only 15 millimeters high. Now, of course, we have 6 millimeter here, which, as you can see, this is an entire company. Or as you can see, this tank is considerably smaller than this tank. Now, the reason these things were done this way and was so you can have more things on the battlefield. So if you wanted to do an entire company, you would go 6 millimeter. As you can see here, this is an entire Napoleonic thing, horses that I've been working on, and you can see how small and how hard it is to paint all these guys here. But what happens is now you can field entire battlefields because you bring the scale down. With a 15 millimeter, what you're able to do is you're able to do companies more or less. So you're able to do small companies and fight certain battles. But with a 28 mil, such as the Games Workshop commonly likes to use, you can do squad battles, and that's why the difference. Now, the American conversion, and let's just use the 6 millimeter so it makes a little more sense, is for 6.2 millimeter, the conversion is 1/285th. That means that this tank is 285 times smaller than its real scale. And that's how you figure out the different scales. As I said, all this stuff has been, the different sizes is so you can do different battlefields. There's no way that you can do this kind of scale, you know, in a 15 mil or even a 28 mil, because you would need probably about 30 feet of table to even to attempt something like that. And how many of us have 30 feet of table? But using a 6 millimeter scale, or micro armor as they like to call it, you are able to do these tremendously huge battles within a smaller space in a 4 foot to 6 foot table, and really do a lot of different things. So I hope this explains a lot about scale and clears up some of the mystery of why they called it 28 mil or 15 mil or even 6 mil or 1/28 scale or 1/72nd scale, which 15 mil is 1/72nd scale. So again, I hope it clears it up, and let's take it up top and get on out of here. Well, there you go, another miniatures world. I hope now you understand what scale is and what the difference is and how army composition works according to scale. With that said, I want to thank you guys for watching this, and we'll see you again soon.
Hey everyone, it's your friend the Board Game Renegade here. And if you've been watching Throat Punch Lunch, you know that I like having fun, joking around, playing with my board games, making sound effects and doing things like that. However, during this episode, I would not be doing that, and that is because I want to be respectful to the theme of the game that I am showing you this week. It is a historical game, and it is about war, and I cannot make light of that subject. It's about World War II. Many people died leading up to the war. Many people died during the war, and it is something that should not be made fun of. With that being said, the game I'm going to talk to you about is Memoir 44, which is my favorite game, by the way. And the reason why I want to speak to you about the theme in this game this week is because this week is Veterans Day, and I just wanted to show some respect to the people that fight for this country by talking about a game that is very near and dear to me and is very respectful, by the way. So let me show you a little bit about the theme of Memoir 44 and why I feel that it is very thematic, and then I'll come back with a closing statement. So as I mentioned in the intro, Memoir 44 is a World War II war games of sort, but it's not a war game like a technical war game. It's fairly simple to play, and what makes it very, very thematic is that the skirmishes and the battles that you have in this game are actual battles that occurred in World War II. The game comes with a rule book, and in the rule book you'll find, I think there's 16 basic scenarios. And the scenarios show you how to set up the game, but what's interesting about it is that the setup of the actual map is close to the setup of how these battles took place. Sure, the scale is different because it is a small board. However, the setup replicates that battle as well as it could. The locations are exact and everything. Right here on the actual pages of the book where it shows you the scenarios, you'll find a historical background of the actual skirmish that took place. That is excellent. And then the briefing shows you how you win, and the briefing also pretty much tries to emulate the victory conditions of the actual battles. For all of the units that the people give orders to are plastic miniatures, whether you're the Axis or the Allied forces. You have some beautiful little miniatures. I mean, they're not the most detailed, but there are a lot of them, and they still look nice. The Axis units come in this gray, and as you can see, the mold for the Axis is different than the Allied force mold. You see, that's pretty cool. So the Allied forces are green, the Axis is gray. They even have different tanks to replicate the tanks used in World War II. I'm not a history buff, so I don't know what these tanks are called, but they both look different for each side, which is awesome. And both sides also have artillery. The artilleries look the same. The opposite side of this has a green board, like a grassland board, so that you could flip the board around and change the environment as needed for the skirmishes. There are also different terrain tiles that come in the game because, you know, there's different types of terrain. There's the hedgerows, and these are also reversible. Those are hills. You also have like towns and cities which look like this. You have rivers. You have forest. There are also other pieces that help bring out the theme, such as these bunkers. There are bridges on the opposite side of those. You have sandbags and barbed wire. And there's also the command card system, which helps with the theme. So that is Memoir 44. The game is very thematic. It's educational, it's fun, and it's very respectful. Thank you for watching the video. And if you're a veteran, thank you for serving your country. Until next time, I'm the Board Game Renegade. Peace.
So that is Throat Punch Lunch episode 10. Thanks so much for taking your time to watch the different segments that we put together for you. And as Jerry said, this weekend is Veterans Day, so please take the time this weekend to go thank a veteran for their service in the armed forces, whichever branch they might be. And just remember, it doesn't have to be Veterans Day for you to show your support and thanks for everything that our veterans have done for our country. It can be any day of the year, and I know that they would appreciate that. So take the time to go out and thank one of our veterans, many of our veterans this weekend, for everything that they've done. And thank you again for joining us. Thank you to all my contributors that have taken the time and energy to put together all of these segments. I really appreciate that, and I hope you show your support in the comment section as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you guys on the flip side.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.